From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day. Radio Pilipinas World Service can also be heard on shortwave broadcast through the shortwave facilities of the United States Agency for Global Media or Voice of America on the following shortwave frequencies: 15.640 MHz, 17.750 MHz, and 21.720 MHz. I'm your host, Leo Magpayo, and this is Dateline Malacañang. Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Wednesday conferred the Order of Sikatuna on outgoing Hungarian Ambassador Titanilia Toth, recognizing her efforts in strengthening ties between the Philippines and Hungary. Toth received the award during her farewell call at Malacañang Palace, where the President expressed gratitude for her service and contributions to bilateral relations. Hungary has consistently supported the early conclusion of a free trade agreement or FTA between the European Union and the Philippines, underscoring its commitment to deeper economic cooperation. In a separate engagement, President Marcos also met with outgoing Dutch Ambassador Marielle Geerts. He noted that her tenure was marked by both memorable experiences and significant progress in bilateral relations, thanking her for supporting Philippine development initiatives. The chief executive reaffirmed the country's commitment to sustaining and deepening partnerships with Hungary and the Netherlands, highlighting the importance of continued cooperation in trade, investment, and development.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang on Wednesday said President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.'s proposed tax reform package and amendments to the Electric Power Industry Reform Act, or EPIRA, are the product of careful study and consultations. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro stressed that the President does not announce major policy initiatives, especially in his State of the Nation Address or SONA, without thorough review and consultation with relevant officials. She added that the administration's economic team will present details of the measures, including fiscal impact and funding sources. On whether the tax reforms bills will be certified as urgent, Castro said the proposals must first be transmitted to the President for review before certification. President Marcos unveiled the tax reform package and EPIRA amendments in his fifth SONA as part of efforts to strengthen the economy, improve revenue generation, and enhance the energy sector.
Hindi po magsasalita ang Pangulo kung wala siyang basihan. Inaaral po ng Pangulo ang bawat sinasabi niya. Hindi po siya nagsasalita sa harap ng media, especially sa SONA, kung wala siyang pagbabatayan. Ang kailangan lang po kasi makita yung mga bill. At pag nakita po ng Pangulo, ay definitely yan po ay isa-certify as urgent.
In his address, the President called for the removal of system loss charges and the corresponding value-added tax from electricity bills, emphasizing that such costs should not be borne by consumers.
Dateline Malacañang.
Meanwhile, Malacañang on Wednesday clarified that President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.'s proposal to scrap system loss charges from electricity bills is meant to protect consumers from avoidable costs, not to financially burden electric utilities. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro issued the statement after the Philippine Rural Electric Cooperatives Association warned that removing system loss charges without government support could hurt cooperatives. Castro explained that the president's plan seeks to end the practice of passing losses to consumers while pushing utilities to improve efficiency. She stressed that utilities must strengthen monitoring and implement measures against electricity theft and pilferage. The palace emphasized that the proposal remains under study to ensure reforms will not negatively affect distributors. Subsidies for cooperatives, Castro noted, are not being discussed.
Ang gusto po ng Pangulo ay matanggal itong extra cost sa ating mga kababayan, hindi naman para pasanin ang burden na ito ng mga consumer, pati naman po ng mga utility companies. Hindi po yan ang nais ng Pangulo. Ang nais lamang po ng Pangulo ay tiyakin din ng mga utility companies na mayroon silang isinasagawang plano at pagmamonitor para maiwasan po itong losses na ito. Lalong-lalo na po yung mga losses because of theft, pilferage, na napapasan ng mga maaayos at mga matitirong mga Pilipino na nagbabayad ng kanilang mga obligasyon. So, dapat itong sagutin ng utility companies. Bakit? Dahil kailangan nilang gumawa ng programa para maiwasan ito. So, kailangan na maging efficient din sila para maiwasan ang losses na napapasan ng ating mga kababayan. So, ito po ay inaaral dahil hindi po nais ng Pangulo na hindi rin maging maganda ang epekto nito sa mga utility companies. Sa pag-subsidize, hindi siya napag-uusapan. Ang kinakailangan din pag-aralan ng utility companies kung paano nila maiiwasan na magkaroon ng losses.
In his fifth State of the Nation address, President Marcos urged Congress to amend the Electric Power Industry Reform Act, or EPIRA, to prohibit charging consumers for system losses, including value-added tax or VAT on such charges. The president argued that households should not shoulder costs from technical inefficiencies or theft, saying the current practice unfairly inflates bills.
Dateline Malacañang.
Meanwhile, Senate President Sherwin Gatchalian and Senator J.V. Ejercito have filed complementary bills to remove system loss charges and value-added tax or VAT from electricity bills, turning President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.'s State of the Nation Address or SONA directive into concrete proposals for consumer relief. Gatchalian on Wednesday filed Senate Bill No. 2350, the proposed System Loss Charge Abolition Act, which would stop utilities from charging customers for electricity lost before reaching homes and businesses. The Senate President said Filipino families should not be forced to pay for electricity they never used, noting that system loss accounts for 5 to 6% of a Meralco customer's bill. Ejercito, meanwhile, filed Senate Bill No. 2343 to exempt electricity sales from VAT by amending the tax code. Unlike measures limited to VAT on system loss, his proposal removes the tax across the supply chain, from generation to distribution, aimed at lowering costs and boosting household purchasing power. He also filed a separate bill to bar utilities from passing inefficiencies, pilferage, and avoidable losses to consumers. The twin measures follow President Marcos's call in his fifth SONA for Congress to act on energy affordability, citing public demand for lower electricity prices.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang on Wednesday moved to calm public fears assuring Filipinos that nuclear energy will only be pursued if it fully meets international safety, security, and regulatory standards. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro underscored that safety remains the administration's top priority, following renewed debate after President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. revived plans to include nuclear power in the country's long-term energy mix during his fifth State of the Nation address or SONA. Castro revealed that the president also raised the issue in his bilateral meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, admitting that nuclear safety is difficult to explain. She added that the Department of Energy, or DOE, through the Nuclear Energy Program Interagency Committee, is taking a whole-of-government approach to prepare for possible nuclear development. The palace stressed that the Philippines will adhere strictly to International Atomic Energy Agency or IAEA standards.
Kahit naman po na nagkaroon ng bilateral meeting ang Pangulo with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, isa po ito sa kanyang nabanggit dahil hindi madali na ipaliwanag ang safety ng nuclear energy. At sinisigurado naman po na kapag ito po ay pinasok po natin, ang pag-aaral po na ito ay dapat na kumpleto. At ang mga polisiya na gagamitin dito ay hindi po itatago sa inyo. Ang DOE po, sa pamamagitan po ng Nuclear Energy Program Interagency Committee, ay nagsasagawa na po at nagtatrabaho on a whole-of-government approach. So, kailangan mag-comply sa safety, security, and safeguards requirement na naaayon din naman po sa International Atomic Energy Agency. So, hindi po susuong ang ating pamahalaan, ang administrasyon, kung ito po ay magpuput in danger ang ating mga kababayan, magkakaroon ng hindi magandang sitwasyon or kondisyon. Kasi ang inuuna po ng Pangulo at ng administrasyon ay ang safety ng ating mga kababayan.
The assurance comes amid concerns from lawmakers and netizens citing past nuclear accidents and the high cost of nuclear facilities. In his SONA, President Marcos identified nuclear power as a long-term solution to stabilize energy supply and reduce reliance on imported oil as demand continues to rise alongside economic growth.
Dateline Malacañang.
Also on Wednesday, Malacañang affirmed that President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. remains committed to passing an anti-political dynasty law, despite not mentioning the measure in his fifth State of the Nation address or SONA. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro clarified that the proposal is still a priority for the administration. She explained that the palace is awaiting developments in Congress, particularly in the Senate, where deliberations on the measure remain pending.
Opo, yan pa rin po ang nais ng Pangulo na maipasa sa panahon niya at sa kanyang administrasyon itong anti-political dynasty bill. So, hinihintay na lang po natin kung paano at hanggang kailan ito magkakaroon ng BICAM dahil sa ating pagkakaalam ay ang Senado po yata ang kinakailangan pang metapusin patungkol dyan.
1987 Constitution mandates Congress to prohibit political dynasties as may be defined by law, but nearly 4 decades later, no enabling legislation has been enacted. Over the years, several anti-political dynasty bills have been filed in both chambers, seeking to limit immediate family members from simultaneously holding or succeeding one another in elective office. None, however, has become law.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.'s index of governance has climbed to 55.1%, up by 2.3 points from May, according to the latest Boses ng Bayan survey of RPMD Foundation Incorporated. The July 12 to 19 survey showed a 55.4% trust rating and a 55.8% job performance rating, with net trust at plus 25.2 and net performance at plus 27.7. Favorable assessments continued to outweigh negative responses by wide margins. Analysts said the increase reflects a gradual strengthening of public confidence, with the president's anti-corruption exposés seen as a possible factor. They cautioned that confidence will ultimately depend on visible improvements in jobs, food prices, public services, infrastructure, peace and order, and the overall cost of living. The survey also ranked cabinet officials, with Social Welfare Secretary Rex Gatchalian again topping the list at 88.2%, slightly higher than his previous 87% rating. Education Secretary Sani Angara and Interior Secretary John Vic Remulla followed in the second tier with scores of 86.9 and 86.6% respectively. Justice Secretary Frederick Vida led the third tier at 85.7%, joined by Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro Jr. at 85.2% and Public Works Secretary Vince Dizon at 84.9%. Executive Secretary Ralph Recto and Special Assistant to the President Antonio Lagdameo Jr. ranked in the fourth tier with 83.9 and 83.1% respectively. Agriculture Secretary Francisco Chu Laurel Jr. topped the fifth tier at 82.5%, followed by Science and Technology Secretary Renato Solidum Jr. at 82.2% and Agrarian Reform Secretary Conrado Estrella III at 81.7%. The findings highlight the administration's continuing challenge of turning national policies into visible, lasting gains for Filipino households and communities.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang on Wednesday said the fate of detained Senators Rodante Marcoleta and Jinggoy Estrada rests with the courts, not the Senate, rejecting calls to allow them to participate in the impeachment proceedings while under detention. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro stressed that Senate Minority Leader Alan Peter Cayetano's claim that the two are political prisoners is only his personal opinion. Cayetano, in his counter State of the Nation address or SONA, defended the minority bloc and argued that Estrada and Marcoleta should be allowed to attend the impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte despite facing plunder cases. Castro countered that decisions on bail or temporary freedom lie solely with the courts. She added that if Cayetano believes the cases are politically motivated, he is free to represent the two senators as their lawyer and prove his claims in court.
Kung yan po ang kanyang paniniwala, hindi naman din po siguro to ang paniniwala ng Sandigan Bayan. Iba ang kanyang pananaw, iba rin naman ang pananaw ng mga korte. At sinasabi niya dapat ay ma-bail out sila or mabigyan ng pagkakataon na mag-post ng bail. Hindi po kay Senator Alan Cayetano ang pagpapasya. Nasa korte, nasa Sandigan Bayan. So kung ano man ang mga kanyang binanggit, kung yan ang paniwala niya political motivation, maaari naman po siguro siyang tumayo na lawyer sa dalawa para ito'y mapatunayan. But definitely, may mga ebidensyang nakita. At yung dalawa po na senador, ay maaari naman nila itong pasinungalingan habang sila po ang magbibigay ng kanilang depensa.
Palace also opposed Marcoleta's request to attend the trial, warning that granting such permission would amount to special treatment and could set a precedent for other detained professionals to demand the same. Castro noted that court rulings only allow detained lawyers to represent themselves, not other clients, and recalled that the Sandigan Bayan had previously denied Estrada's plea for virtual freedom. She further cited former Supreme Court Justice Antonio Carpio's view that public officials detained on graft-related charges should remain suspended from office.
So if ever they will be allowed, they will be practicing their profession. So, if that would be the case at inalaw sila, maaaring lahat ng mga profesional na nakakulong habang dinidinig ang kaso ay hahayaan na rin na magtrabaho. Halimbawa, ang isang abogado, ang sabi ng korte, may desisyon ang korte patungkol dito. Siya ay maaari lamang gawin ang kanyang profesyon or i-practice ang kanyang profession bilang abogado kung siya mismo ang nasasakdal at ipinagtatanggol niya ang sarili niya. Pero hindi siya pwedeng mag-represent ng ibang kliyente. So kung gano'n ang mangyayari at papayagan sila at magkakaroon ng special treatment, maaaring lahat ng nagtatrabaho na nakakulong ay hayaan na rin magtrabaho habang nakakulong. At nabanggit na rin po dito, nagkaroon na rin po ng desisyon ang Sandigan Bayan patungkol sa motion ni Senator Jingo Estrada na hindi pwedeng mabigyan ng tinatawag na virtual freedom ang isang naka-detain. And at the same time, according din kay Justice Carpio, na ang mga tao na nakakulong habang dinidig ang kaso patungkol sa mga kaso ng graft and corruption, at kasama din dito kasi similar nature ang plunder, sila dapat ay suspended. So, kung ano man ang magiging desisyon ng Senado patungkol sa manifestation ni Senator Marcoleta, hindi po rin ito mananaig dahil ngayon ang jurisdiction po kay Senator Jinggoy at Senator Marcoleta ay nasa kamay po ng Sandigan Bayan.
That was Palace Press Officer Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
Still on Wednesday, Presidential Communications Office or PCO Undersecretary Claire Castro hit back at Senator Amy Marcos after the latter posted a Facebook video that appeared to mock the Palace Press official. The video, which alleged that the International Criminal Court or ICC is in danger, claimed there was an ICC inside Malacañang. It abruptly cut off while spelling out Impactang Clay, a play on Castro's name. Impacta is a Filipino term for an evil woman. Castro dismissed the attack, saying the insult better describes those behind the video. She argued that the label belongs to Senator Marcos and her group, adding that they embody the description at the highest level.
Hindi ako sanay sa mga ganong salita. Hindi ako normal na nagsasalita ng ad hominem sa kapwa ko. So, kung sila ang nakapag-describe ng ganong salita, alam nila kung ano ang ibig sabihin nito. Alam nila ang description ng salitang impacta. It takes one to know one. Kaya kung sila ay affected sa aking mga nababanggit dahil tayo kumakalaban sa fake news at iyan ang kanilang pananaw, isang impacta ang kumalaban sa fake news? Sino ngayon ang naglalarawan ng totoong impacta? Yung gumawa ng video? Yung kasama sa video? Yung nag-direct ng video? Yun ang masasabi nating totoong naglalarawan ng salitang yan. At huwag silang mag-alala. Ang corona ay nasa kanila. Na kay Senator Amy at sa mga grupo nila. At hindi natin kayang agawin ito mula sa kanila. Wala ako sa kalingkingan ni Senator Amy para sa ganyang klaseng description. Sila ay nasa maximum level.
That was Palace Press Officer Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang on Wednesday dismissed Vice President Sara Duterte's latest remarks against President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr., calling them baseless and not worth responding to. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro criticized Duterte's admission that she did not listen to the president's Fifth State of the Nation Address, or SONA, stressing that the SONA is a constitutional duty where the chief executive reports accomplishments and outlines plans for the nation. She said ignoring it reflects disregard for the Constitution and the country's institutions. Castro warned that those who remain uninformed about government programs are more vulnerable to manipulation, urging the public to seek the truth rather than be misled. She rejected Duterte's claims, questioning campaign promises, pointing out that subsidized rice at 20 pesos per kilo is already available through Kadiwa centers. She also brushed aside Duterte's personal grievance about the presidential helicopter, as well as her allegations of dictatorship and doubts over the 2028 elections, saying such assertions are a waste of time. On Duterte's criticism linking school violence to weak leadership, Castro countered that the government and the Philippine National Police have acted swiftly and continue to implement measures to address the incidents. Malacañang reiterated that the public should focus on the president's programs to avoid being blinded from the truth.
Ano po ba ang nangyayari sa isang tao kapag hindi po inaalam ang sitwasyon ng kanyang bansa, kung ano ang programa ng Pangulo? Walang alam. Sino man, hindi tayo nagpapatungkol in particular sa sino mang tao. Ang SONA, ito po ay paraan, ito ay ang pag-uulat ng Pangulo ng kanyang naging accomplishments, kung ano pa ang gagawin ng gobyerno para sa taong bayan. Ito po ay base sa konstitusyon. Ang hindi pagbibigay respeto sa SONA ay hindi pagrespeto sa konstitusyon, hindi pagrespeto sa institusyon. May mga tao na ang nais ay manatiling walang alam, mangmang ang mga kababayan, mas madaling maging or manipulahin ang mga taong walang alam. So sa mga kababayan natin, lagi tayong maging mapanuri. Obligasyon po nating alamin ang katotohanan at huwag tayong sumunod sino man na nag-uudyok na manatili tayong mangmang sa katotohanan. Mabubulag po tayo dyan. Obligasyon po nating alamin para hindi tayo manatiling mangmang sa katotohanan.
As Palace Press Officer Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has appointed former Education Undersecretary Debbie Jean Centeno Di Jamco and former Food and Drug Administration or FDA Director General Paulo Teston as Associate Justices of the Court of Tax Appeals or CTA, Malacañang announced on Wednesday. The two appointees will assist Presiding Justice Maria Belen Ringpis Liban in the court's adjudicative and administrative functions. Centeno Di Giamco previously served as Deputy Undersecretary from 2025 to 2026 and spent more than a decade at the CTA as Judicial Staff Head to former Presiding Justice Roman Del Rosario. She also practiced as a tax and corporate lawyer at SGV and Company and holds degrees in economics from the University of Santo Tomas and law from San Beda College. Teston, meanwhile, served as FDA Chief and Health Undersecretary in 2025. Before joining government, he was a senior associate of Most Law and has been teaching at the Manuel L. Quezon University College of Law since 2024. He earned his economics and law degrees from San Beda College. The Court of Tax Appeals, a collegiate court with the same rank as the Court of Appeals, has exclusive jurisdiction over tax cases involving the Bureau of Internal Revenue, Bureau of Customs, local tax disputes, and other revenue-related matters.
Dateline Malacañang.
House Speaker Faustino Boji D. III and Majority Leader Ferdinand Alexander Marcos have filed a measure to raise the annual tax-free income ceiling to 350,000 pesos, aiming to provide meaningful relief to Filipino families. House Bill number 10345, filed Tuesday, seeks to implement President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.'s State of the Nation Address or SONA directive to ease the tax burden on workers. If enacted, the bill would increase the exemption threshold from 250,000 to 350,000 pesos, allowing more workers to keep a larger share of their earnings. The proposal amends Section 24 of the National Internal Revenue Code by restructuring graduated income tax rates. It places annual taxable income not exceeding 350,000 pesos under the 0% bracket, introduces a 15% rate for income above 350,000 but not exceeding 400,000 pesos, and retains existing marginal rates for higher brackets. The measure also preserves separate income tax computation for married individuals, keeps exemptions for minimum wage earners, and maintains the optional 8% tax for qualified, self-employed, and professionals. Mixed income earners will remain subject to graduated rates on compensation income, and either graduated or optional taxation on business or professional income. Under the bill, the Department of Finance will issue implementing rules within 90 days of effectivity. The measure will take effect 15 days after full publication. The proposal reflects the administration's push to update tax brackets in line with present economic realities and rising costs of living.
Dateline Malacañang.
In other developments, the Department of Justice, or DOJ, announced Wednesday that criminal complaints for perjury and cyber libel have been filed against 18 former bodyguards of fugitive ex-lawyer Zaldico and their lawyer in 4 regional trial courts, or RTCs, across Metro Manila. DOJ spokesperson Paulo Martinez said the informations were lodged Tuesday before the RTCs of Caloocan, Las Piñas, Muntinlupa, and San Juan in line with jurisdiction and venue rules. He explained that cyber libel cases are filed based on the rule on cybercrime warrants, while perjury cases are filed where the allegedly false affidavits were sworn. The charges stem from a joint sworn statement related press conferences, interviews, social media posts, and other online publications. The group, dubbed the 18 Maleta Boys, faced 10 separate informations, 6 counts of cyber libel under the Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012, and 4 counts of perjury. Lawyer Levito Baligod was named co-accused in certain cases and will also face a separate cyber libel charge. Other complaints were dismissed for lack of prima facie evidence. The DOJ said the findings confirm sufficient basis for prosecution, noting that prima facie evidence with reasonable certainty of conviction exists. Baligod, in a social media post, claimed the cases were spread across different courts to make it difficult for them before filing a motion for reconsideration.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Department of Migrant Workers, or DMW, is closely monitoring the conditions of overseas Filipino workers, or OFWs, after a magnitude 7.1 earthquake struck Kumamoto in southern Japan. In an advisory, the agency said the Migrant Workers Office, or MWO, in Osaka is coordinating with the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration, or OWA, the Philippine Consulate General, and the Filipino community to verify the safety of Filipinos in affected areas. So far, no injuries or casualties involving Filipino nationals have been reported. Japanese authorities confirmed at least 13 deaths in Kumamoto Prefecture, with scores still missing. Rescue operations continue after reports of people trapped in a collapsed shopping mall and a paper factory. The DMW urged Filipinos in Kyushu and nearby areas to remain vigilant, prepare for possible aftershocks, and follow official updates from local authorities and the Japan Meteorological Agency. Filipinos needing assistance may contact the Philippine Consulate General in Osaka through its hotlines +816 6575 7593, +8170 2275 6082, +8170 2447 4016, +8190 403 7984, or email atn@pcgosaka.org. The DMW OWA hotline 1348 is also available for calls from the Philippines and overseas. The agency said additional advisories will be issued as verified information becomes available.
Dateline Malacañang.
And finally, the water level at Angat Dam rose to 154.33 meters as of 8 Thursday morning, showing a slight improvement after days of rainfall across Luzon. The dam's normal operating level is 210 meters, meaning it remains well below the ideal mark despite the increase. Hydrologists earlier noted that the reservoir had been declining by an average of 0.3 meters per day since July 1st, with some days recording drops of up to 0.6 meters. On Wednesday, the level stood at 150.85 meters, lower than the previous day's 150.91 meters. The recent rains helped ease the downward trend, but experts stressed that precipitation has so far been light to moderate and insufficient to fully replenish the watershed. Weather systems, including a low-pressure area and easterlies, continue to bring rains to most of Luzon. Localized thunderstorms are highly likely, particularly in Metro Manila, but forecasts indicate only light showers over the Angat watershed. Authorities continue to urge the public to conserve water, warning that despite the improvement, Angat remains far from its normal level. Hydrologists recommend avoiding wasteful use of water and encourage rainwater harvesting as a practical measure. The dam supplies more than 90% of Metro Manila's water needs, making its level critical to households, businesses, and agriculture. Officials emphasize that sustained rainfall is needed in the coming weeks to stabilize supply and avert possible shortages. The public is advised to remain mindful of consumption as conservation efforts remain essential until Angat Dam's level returns closer to its normal operating mark.
Dateline Malacañang.
Before we conclude our program, Radyo Pilipinas World Service of the Presidential Broadcast Service can be heard over the following shortwave frequencies: 15.640 MHz, 17.750 MHz, and 21.720 MHz. Radyo Pilipinas World Service is also live on audio streaming. Just download Evox PBS Receiver on your Google Play Store or the App Store from your Apple phone. You can also visit our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Just type in and search for Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Kindly subscribe, like, and share our posts as well. And that concludes this edition of Dateline Malacañang. For Radyo Pilipinas World Service, this is Leo Magpayo. Good day and mabuhay.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.